Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. Today we are back for another episode of Anna's podcast and her telling her story. And yeah, I'm starting kind of late and I've been feeling kind of sour a little bit, kind of a little Olivia Rodrigo coded. 2021. No, I'm just kidding. No, I don't know. I just winter sucks. You guys agreed with me. You guys were like, I'm hating January. And I'm like, thank you. I am too. I'm just not feeling it. Like, it's still kind of a struggle. And I don't care what anyone says. Deficit in January sucks. So, yeah, we're all here suffering together. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm having fun because I'm not. But what we're going to do is we're going to continue. We're going to get to business. I'm going to calm down, and we're going to move forward, okay? Let's go.
This podcast, which is a little bit wild, but I think I started to isolate myself because I was embarrassed that I wasn't able to keep up with my friends who were making, oh God, already crying, who were making all of these amazing changes in their life. And I was making the same changes, but not seeing the same success. So you begin to build this mental capacity of like, I must be lying to myself. I must be a failure.
Okay. So one of the things when it comes to E followed by the letter D, or as I call it on this channel, toxic ritualistic behavior or toxic ritualistic mindsets, is we compare. So there's always a comparison. And you'll notice that people that have these issues, they compare all the time. And they compare like body size or progress or these types of things, which in a realistic view, we would understand that everybody is probably doing things a little bit differently. Everybody's body is a little bit different. Everybody's body is at a different level. For example, if you're talking about somebody who's super morbidly obese versus just obese, the journey is different at those two different levels. Even morbid, the journey is different. They're different phases. There's a reason that those medical categories exist. It's because there are a lot of different correlations within research and these types of things. And that's why it's good to categorize it. That's why I'm a huge fan of the term obese, because it's medical. It helps us to explain the physical reality of where we're at. People ask me a lot, what do I use? I use body fat percentage. I focus mostly on male body fat percentage, obviously. But from my estimation and from the chart that I use, it's about 5% more for women. But super morbid obesity is, for men, it's 40% body fat or higher. Morbid obesity is 35% to 30%. Or no, sorry. Morbid obesity is 40% to 35%, and obesity is 35% to 30%. And when you get under that, then you're just underweight. So I use body fat percentage. I think it's more accurate. I just use one of those scales. I know a lot of people have issues with that, but it doesn't really matter if you are using the same scale throughout the entire journey. Even if it is an estimation, it'll be accurate because you're using the same one the whole time. The other thing, remember for women, it would be, the chart that I used, it would be 45 plus is super morbid, 40 is morbid, and 35 is obese, I think? No, that's wrong. Oh gosh, my brain is just not working with numbers right now. It's 5% more than the male numbers. So it's, I guess, for under 40% would be obese. Yeah. Right? Oh my gosh, my brain is not working. Oh my god. I'm so sorry. Hold on, I'm gonna pause this. Ooh, I'm struggling a bit. I need to go to the gym. My dopamine is really, really, really low. Hold on. I'll be right back. Okay, so for women, it would be above 45% is super morbid. 40 to 45% is morbid, and like 40 to 35 is obese. And then it gets a little bit different. Then I think after that, when you get towards around 30, I've heard some numbers lower than that, then you're no longer overweight. But it's kind of around there. It depends on where you look. But yeah. Gosh, I don't know. I'm sorry, y'all. My brain is just not working with numbers at the moment. But yes, that's the cutoffs that I use. That's what I describe on this channel, is those cutoffs. So it's a 5% difference between male and female. And yeah, so let's go ahead and continue.
Failure, I don't want to have the conversation about why isn't it working. And I don't even know if my friends.
Yeah, so if you're super morbidly obese, for example, you're gonna have a lot more swelling and a lot of drastic fluid fluctuation. And those fluid fluctuations can be major. They can be huge. Like for me, throughout the winter, I gained a lot of weight last year. And then same thing with this winter, I did as well. Like you swell really, really easily during this time. So like for me, I had potatoes and I'm super swollen and I'm just obese, you know? But I'm probably not like drastically more bloated now. But it's like you have to think about it in terms of all these hormonal differences, and all these things are going to be drastically worse when you're super morbidly obese. And so it can look faster for a while and then slower for a while too. It just depends. For people that are more just obese or less, it can be just very linear. But when you're super morbidly obese, it's typically not a linear journey. And that might be what she was witnessing. And she's really getting in her head about it. I told you guys, you got to be rooted in physical reality when you're losing weight, and understand that your body is functioning really differently from a super morbidly obese perspective. It's very different than morbid or obese, especially obese. It's a lot different. So you have to understand like the gravity of your size and like where you're actually at. And everybody's going to be at different fitness journeys, different fitness levels. It doesn't make sense to compare. That's basically what I'm trying to say. It doesn't make sense to compare. For example, I've been losing weight with a friend, but she's female and I'm male. It wouldn't make sense for her to compare our journeys that much. It just doesn't make sense. It's different. So, and even like our weight distributions and a lot of these different things, they're really different, which is interesting to look at from a scientific perspective, but it wouldn't be smart to be really, really tripping about it or like agonizing over it or all these different things. And that's not even to say like that it doesn't take a while to get out of super morbid obesity. It does. Even for me, it did. It took me quite a while. You know, I had to not lose for a year and a half to work on my thyroid. And then I started losing in August of 2022. I had to take that winter off. And then I lost a lot in 2023, which you guys saw on, you know, most of you guys, or a lot of you guys saw on the channel. I lost about 50 pounds. Then I put some back on in the winter again. And then this past year, I lost about, in addition to that 50, I lost, sorry, I'm like trying to calculate, probably another 40 or so, 45, something like that. So I got to like 296, and then I got down to 253. So yeah, 40 something. That's like the weight wise, but when I looked at it year over year, it's very drastic because my swelling is not nearly as bad. So you have to kind of look at things year over year. You have to like just see, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to compare to other people because you're going to have different health levels, different hormones, and all these different things at a different point. I think it's great to support each other, but the comparison doesn't make sense. That's all I'm trying to say. It's not a competition. This biggest loser mindset is not helpful whatsoever. And it just creates problems, and it is toxically ritualistic. It is. It isn't a competition with anybody. That's not a good idea. Okay?
Judged me in that way, but I judged myself in that way because I built my entire community and friendship around managing weight, and then I couldn't be successful in that friendship because I wasn't losing weight anymore. I even felt that way partially in my job. Like it's wild to think.
It's so not like logical to think, oh, I'm having a plateau, my friend isn't going to like me anymore. Where's the logic? If your friend was that crazy, it's like, get the hell away from me. Like, you're weird. I would not put up with that, period. Because you can't, like, it's not always in your control. Because there are times when you swell, there are times when you have body comp shifts. I had a massive body comp shift, period, last spring. Like from in April, I completely plateaued because I went back to the gym and I was starting to put on muscle, and it completely canceled out everything. So I didn't lose anything in April. If my friend was tripping on me because I didn't lose anything in April, I'd be like, what the fuck? You know? That's stupid. I don't know. It's wild. Truly wild. It just doesn't make sense. And I hope I can at least just try to bring that reality check to the situation and be like, this doesn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense to judge somebody for plateauing. Now, if they're like massively regaining constantly and then they go all the way back up and then it's like a whole other level, okay, I could see some judgment there, I will be honest. Even I would probably judge a little bit. But that's a whole other level, right? Like if you're having some swelling, or if you're having some plateauage, because it's a part of the process. If you're just hungry, there's been so many times I've told my friend, like, oh gosh, like, and especially in December, and even last year, November, I'm like, I'm really hungry. I can't do this anymore. I have to stop. I'm really hungry. And it's like, it's understandable. We get it. There's been times when my friend tells me the same. It's like, we get it. Just keep it real, There's a lot of swelling in a weight loss journey. Like, unless if you're doing very, very low carb, like if you're doing keto or carnivore or something where there's absolutely no water retention, you're going to have water fluctuation. Absolutely. So you have to, like, understand that and just stop tripping, just stop.
When I'm really
always keep caloric realism in your mind. If you're not eating enough to gain fat, then you're not gaining fat, period. It's water.
honest with myself, how much that inability to achieve that goal really messed me up.
Well, I think which obesity as a medical term, right, and label carries an unwarranted moral judgment to it that does not
Stupid.
apply to other medical conditions.
Yes, I think that there is a lot of stigma about obesity, and I think there's
the issue is that it's a choice. That's why people have a sort of feeling about it, but not like your average person doesn't really have a feeling about it, to be honest. The term obese is not as like polarizing as calling somebody fat. Like if you tell somebody you're a fat ass, that is like very offensive to most people. And if somebody's fat, they're going to be really like, oh my God, unless if it's clearly you're a friend, you're roasting each other or something like that. Like if you said that to a fat stranger, people would be like, what the hell, But like obese, it can be used as an insult. It has been in recent years, but it still doesn't have that same cultural impact of being called fat from like 40 years ago. It's been a long time where that's been the word, So it's like, I think obesity is really good because it describes different levels, and we need that, you know, and it's really helpful because we can look at different trends and correlations of experience. You know, what I've described in my obese experience, which is where I'm currently at, I am obese. I've really struggled with very low dopamine symptoms and a lot of like ADHD symptoms, inability to focus, even some other low dopamine symptoms, like more physical symptoms. And it's been tough, you know, and it has really affected my motivation and these types of things. And I have been able to describe that. And I can see, like, okay, I can see why a lot of people that are just obese, they're not motivated to lose the weight because they have low dopamine, which obesity causes low dopamine. So it's like that becomes probably the biggest issue for a lot of people. And I would say probably most people when you're just obese, because compared to other levels of obesity, you just don't have all these problems. The bigger you are, the more problems you have. It's difficult. And, you know, there is a bit of a fat acceptance mindset in America where you can be super morbidly obese and people think that your body's functioning completely normally. And it's like, can we stop that? Like, your body is not functioning normally. Your ability to process carbohydrate as a super morbidly obese person is really different from somebody who's not. For example, your hunger cues as a super morbidly obese person are really different from somebody who's not. Like, and it's that kind of mindset which I think has led Anna O'Brien to take all these really huge risks and do all this stuff at a very big size where it can be legitimately dangerous because it's not just, you know, it isn't just a construct or whatever. Like, obesity is a physical reality. And when you're super morbidly obese, it's difficult to do certain things. There are physical limits. You know, like that one video where she was struggling to get out of the water. It was terrifying. And honestly, she felt like she was an inspiration, but to most super morbidly obese people that were watching her, it was a horror story. It was a nightmare made real. It's not inspiring. So it's like, it's just, it shows a lack of care for oneself. And it's unnerving to people. And that's not, you know, she would describe what a lot of people felt as just, oh, well, you're just disgusted with me. You're just this, you're just that. Sometimes online, people say things like that because it's disturbing. It was disturbing, Anna. It was. But that's where it's like, we need to acknowledge that there's a difference. Please. And I try to bring that to attention on this channel as I literally will describe different phases. And I try to talk about the social side too, just because I know a lot of my subscribers are introverted and I am too. And introverts are not always gifted socially. So I try to provide some kind of framework. Even if I get criticized sometimes, they're like, oh, why are you talking about if you're visible as a fat person or not? Or why are you talking about these social categories of fatness and these types of things? And it's like, I'm doing it for the introverts that follow me because I get it. You need to have some kind of guide on the way out because it's difficult, because it does shift. And as an introvert, it's really difficult when it shifts because we're not naturally socially gifted. So it's difficult. And so I'm just trying to fill that niche, so to speak, or I'm trying to speak to that because I am introverted and there aren't going to be tons of introverts doing this because you're talking publicly. It's not that common. I mean, it happens, but I'm just saying. I got to scratch the itch that I can scratch. Anyways, let's continue.
A stigma about bodies in general and what visual cues they give us. So regardless of whether you're plus size or you use a wheelchair, people are going to assume an inordinate amount of things about you based on that visual picture. And as much as you may be different than that visual picture, you are never given the benefit of the doubt. In fact, you're always climbing back from a negative assumption. The hardest part about not losing weight for
the only assumption that you can make is that the person is overeating. That's really all you can assume. You don't know why they're overeating, though. Not every single super big person has an E followed by the letter D. I think Anna does. Okay, I do. But there is usually something serious wrong, like whether it's a hormonal disorder or whether it is an E followed by the letter D or something. It has to be deeply pathological to get to a super morbidly obese place and to stay there, because it's very difficult to sustain it and to even get there. So it's like there is something usually wrong. And I have said, in my opinion, I think probably most people that are super morbidly obese have an E followed by the letter D, just because it takes so much dedication, honestly, to be that big. But there are cases of people who are not, who have severe hormone disorders. And you still have to get treated for that. You still have to take care of it. It's a part of taking care of yourself. There are usually options or ways or things to work with. And you need to educate yourself on the conditions that you have and be an advocate for yourself in a medical setting and try to reach a conclusion or a solution for the problem. And by the way, one of those hormone issues is diabetes, for example. That is a hormone issue that will affect your hunger cues. It makes you hungrier. So that does include treating that. And people don't think of it that way, but that's the case. So you have to really take care of all these things and look at it holistically, which I don't know that Anna does. So let's go ahead and continue.
Me is that I didn't know what else to fix. And I think the automatic reaction to me was just to do more. But then what happens is you do more and, I would...
But what do you mean by doing more?
Eat less and less. I would work out more.
Okay, for how long? See, I really wish there was some kind of pushback on what she's saying, because she's starting to push that idea that you can just eat less and less and you just start gaining weight from osmosis. That's not real. Talk about your hunger, Anna. I'm even giving you the answer. Talk about it. Talk about that you're eating a lot. Talk about that you feel sad or anxious and you eat a lot. Be honest. People want honesty from you. That's all.
More and more. And I would say, honestly, running to SoulCycle, doing 2 classes and running back is probably not healthy behavior. It's just not. And there was one point in my life where I would have been proud of that. Would have been like, look at all the exercise I was doing.
It's not healthy for somebody of your size because it can be damaging to joints and things like that. It's not great. So again, you have to... My super morbidly obese girlies and boilies, your body is delicate at that stage. You have to be very gentle with yourself. Deliberate, calculated, but gentle. Remember, unemotional, de-emotionalize weight loss. And take it slowly but steadily, day by day, with patience. I know it can be backbreakingly patient. It can be like so annoying, or just horrible to have to feel that you have to wait, but you have to just do it that way. I've always described super morbid obesity. It's like the water's coming up and you're starting to drown. And when you start to lose the weight, the water goes down. Very slowly goes up and down. And it goes slowly down like this. And you kind of have to just kind of breathe through it. And it will get better. And it just goes down, down, down. I've also described it as when you're super morbidly obese, it's like you're trying to turn a ship. So you have to turn it kind of slowly. And it takes time. It's like this. It's not like it isn't, you're not doing that. That's at a lower size. You can kind of do that a little bit more. But when you're super morbidly obese, it's like this. You're turning the momentum, and then you start going the other way. Maybe it goes back a bit, but then you keep going. You see, so there has to be that patience. I always like to say, like a metronome. Bing, 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 bing. It can be painstaking. It can be irritating, but you have to be patient, because what you want is you want to get out and stay out. And I don't think she was doing that. She's trying to jerk around. She's trying to do, you can't do it that way. That's not the right mindset when you're in that stage. Just wait for the water to drain, and it will drain. Because the biggest thing about supermorbid obesity is not doing anything. That's huge. Or continuing to gain. That's even worse. And if you're not even continuing to gain, that's already a step. And then you start turning it, and then you can start to lose. But people have to be gentle with themselves at that size. Your body is going through a lot, and it's very stressful to be that size. It's stressful to lose the weight at that size. It's stressful to maintain. It's stressful to gain. It's just stressful for the body. So be delicate. Your body's delicate. That was one of the biggest differences in being obese, is my body is no longer delicate. I can do more than I used to. I can push myself farther than I used to. I still got burned out, but it wasn't like crazy or anything. So you have to think of it that way. Okay? When you're obese, you're not as delicate anymore. So you can kind of do a little bit more. But I wouldn't run, for example. I still wouldn't run as an obese person. Like, you still have to keep it real, you know? I'll be right back. Okay, but can you see how good it is to have those categories? Because you can describe things, with morbid obesity being a transition point between the two. Whereas a lot of times when you are super morbidly obese, you've built a whole system around it to survive. And in morbid obesity, that mental matrix, the system in your brain, and your routines in life have to begin to change. And it can be really difficult mentally to change these things that need to change because you're no longer that big while continuing to lose. That can be a sticking point. So I have always, in my opinion, morbid obesity, from a super morbid obese place to losing, morbid obesity is the most difficult mentally. So, yeah, you have to do a lot of mental work, basically. But in obesity, you're not as delicate. You're not as delicate mentally. You're not as delicate physically. You just kind of can push. But you just get kind of lazy. And that's where I'm at. I don't have an excuse for starting at midnight, but I did. I shouldn't have. But I'm struggling a bit. I'm still doing it. I'm still here. But it's like, you know, there's a reason I call it Obratsity on this channel, okay? It's a little bit brat to be obese. You have to kind of whip yourself into shape a lot. It's not fun, but it has to be done, you know? I can't be too delicate with myself now, otherwise it won't happen. But you can't go too far either, obviously. But it's like, if I would have been like, you're being lazy when I was super morbidly obese, it's like, I'm not being lazy. Like, oh my God, I'm so ill. You know, it's like, I'm really tired. Oh my God. Like, it's just a different feeling. It's different. So you really have to, like, be aware there are differences. Okay? It's really, really helpful. Anyways, I'll continue.
But the reality is like, I was trying to compensate for what my body wasn't doing. And I thought, well, maybe if I just pushed harder, maybe if I just did more, it would change. And then when it didn't, I really did feel like a failure. I also felt like I was delusional. I think that's a really good word for my whole entire journey. It's like, maybe
I think you are a little bit delusional, to be honest. I think I've seen a lot of her stuff, and to me, it seems like she really struggles with understanding how big she actually is. She cannot understand that or grasp it. And it's important to have like to understand where you're at, basically. That's very important because you have to treat it differently at different stages. So, yeah, I think she is kind of delusional a little bit.
Yeah, I'm lying to myself, right? Like maybe I am eating all of these things. Maybe my calorie counting.
You might be. We don't want to talk about it all the time, but it is a major part of the disorder. You do lie to yourself. You do. You're just like, oh, well, that wasn't that much. That's like, ooh, that one just came to my brain like this. Boom. It's like, ooh. It's like a decade of, that wasn't that much. Ooh. Quick. Still got it. That's the big one. Quote, that wasn't that much. Those are words to die by when it comes to B followed by the letter E followed by the letter D. You have to be really careful because it's really easy. And one of the symptoms too is you can dissociate sometimes. Like if it gets really severe, you can start to dissociate while you're eating. And you can actually be unaware of how much you're eating because you're not really in the moment with it when it's happening because you're using it to escape anxiety. It's not about the food. It never is about the food. It's about the anxiety. And so obviously if it gets extremely severe, you can start to dissociate out of it. So she probably is legitimately delusional. You know, she might not actually realize how much she's eating, or she just lies so much about it, and she's always lying to other people, and she might know herself, but it is a symptom to lie about it. That's what makes this tricky, you know? Because I personally wouldn't believe her because she doesn't say things like, I'm just so hungry, or I ate more that month or that week. And that's not a big deal to say. But she can't say that. And so to me, that's a red flag. Because I'm like, did we leave reality? You know, like, where are we right now? Like, and I know a lot of people make fun of her and stuff, or a lot of people, and a lot of you guys actually in my comments, you guys have been you've been more so just frustrated. And I understand that. And I think we forget sometimes it's a mental disorder. Like she may be legitimately delusional about it. I was severely in it from 2009 to 2014, and I had no idea that I was in it. I had no idea that I had one. Not even a concept. And in 2014, I remember the moment where I realized it. And think about that. That's like 5 years of delusion, of not knowing. And I would say things like, well, I'm just addicted to food. I would say things like, I'm just fat. This is just how I am. I can't change it. Like all the stuff. That's how I realized that fat acceptance in general, it was just an extension of this disorder, or the ideas of this disorder perpetuated, because I never was in fat acceptance, but I was in this disorder and I thought the same things. And so it's like, when we look at it from that perspective, it's like, yeah, Alex, you were delusional. I was delusional for 5 years. And that's at a severe level. Severe. So binging very often. Doing the diets, doing this, doing all of the stuff. Body hatred, all of it. Constantly. Taking the Sharpie to the picture, all that stuff. I was big fat friending it. Like, I did it all. For 5 years, and I had no concept that I had this disorder. And then in 2014, a lot of traumatic stuff happened to me that year, and I realized that it was connected. And it was the first time I became aware. I was like, I think I might have an ED. And it was like, whoa. And I started to fight it pretty instantly. But it took me 6 years to get out. It's tough. It can, and for me, it was very severe. I don't think it's always going to take people that long. But I'm telling you, if I could get out of it, anybody can. It's you that way. And it almost killed me. You know, that's why this stuff is sad, because it's like, I do think she's delusional, and she may die. You know? It's horrifying, and I don't know, you know, one of you guys is in the medical field that commented, and you're like, this is not good medicine. Like, you can't lie to somebody this way. It's not ethical, and I agree, it isn't. It's your job. It's just horrible. Anyways, let's continue.
Is off. Maybe I'm not exercising as hard as I think I am. Maybe I'm not going fast enough on that bike. So it becomes this constant internal, like, what can I do more? Until you just break down and give up. And that's essentially what happened. I just finally was like, this is too freaking much. I'm done. And I started to feel just unconnected to my friends. So I dove into work. I would work constantly. I would sleep in the office, and in line with that, we were testing a new piece of software that was for content management for social media. We needed to test that software. I was like, well, I'll just make some Instagram content. We'll see if that does.
You know damn well she was eating a lot while she was doing that, while she's sleeping at the office. A lot of times people with this disorder, they take part in the disorder because they're trying to live a lifestyle that is not sustainable, or stay in relationships that are not sustainable, or be a certain way. You know, I know it's really bad to say, but for me, I was terrified of my anger. And oftentimes I was trying to be nice. And that was a major trigger of mine, was trying to be nice. And I'm not necessarily a nice person. I'm not evil. I'm not cruel. But I am not nicey nice. And I was trying to be. And it was so unnatural to me that I would have to do that to sustain it. So it's like, I'm too brat for that, you guys. I'm a brat. I couldn't do it. It was killing me. Literally killing me. So it's like, you gotta be who you are, you know? And that's just one piece of the puzzle, right? There was a lot of stuff where I was all up in it for a lot of different reasons, but that was a major one. Was I was scared of my anger, and I was trying to be nice. And I think that's horrible. But I had to stop. And that meant I had to deal with pushback because I wasn't nice anymore. So then people are fighting with me and stuff. And I had to deal with it. Because it's like, okay, I have to be who I am. And I have to deal with this. But guess what? I wasn't eating. I'm alive, aren't I? You know? Doesn't mean we can't improve as people, but you gotta be real. And I think that's one of her major things. One of her major triggers is probably lying, or the delusional lies that she does. And so it's like you eat to sublimate these natural desires or these natural feelings to situations you're in. It isn't normal to sleep at the office. So what do? I'm sleeping. I gotta do this because I have to impress people, or I have to please these people in this way, or I have to do this or do that. So I'll work all night and I'll do this, and you know, I'll just grab the donuts while I'm eating while I'm working. I'll just do that so that I can continue to do it. Because a normal person would want to go home, go to sleep, but I won't. Because I have to prove myself. The I have to prove myself line, that's another one that has probably killed a lot of people. And again, I know that one's probably across the spectrum of E followed by the letter D, but it's major in that side of the spectrum. It's major. I have to prove myself. For me, I was trying to stay with somebody in a relationship where we just weren't compatible. And a lot of times in that relationship, I felt like I was constantly having to prove myself to him. And it was a major trigger. Major. And, unfortunately, I don't have a happy ending with it, because when I stopped the disorder, I stopped everything. I stopped trying to prove myself to him all the time, and it died. It withered and died. And I think I wouldn't have even tried that if not for the disorder, because I think we lose touch with reality, not just in any one way, but in many ways. Because when you can't be real about what you're eating, which is such a foundational part of life, when you can't even be real about that, it is so easy to not be real about other stuff. And that's a very uncomfortable truth with this problem. And we have to just live in reality. The best thing about reality, you don't have to work to sustain it. It's just there.
Well, I don't really care. It's all about the job. And anyone who knows me knows that I am a somewhat recovering workaholic. I'm still working on it, but it is who I am. So I became really good at regularly posting, at trying different things, because I was trying to test this software.
So many people with this issue are people pleasers. I'm not a people pleaser. But whenever I tried to please, I would typically engage in the behavior because it's so unnatural to me. It doesn't mean that, like I said, it doesn't mean I'm just a horrible person all the time. I promise I'm not. It just means, like, from my perspective now, it's like I would never try to be with somebody that I'm not compatible with, because I see how dumb it was. And it's just like, I am who I am. He will be who he is. And it's like, we're just going to mesh. And that's it. I have a lot of good sides to me in a relationship. I can be very nurturing. I can be very attentive, consistent, extremely, all these different things. I'm there for a person. I'm very loyal, right? So there's all these traits that I do have that I can bring to the table, that I don't have to people please to be that way. That's just how I am. So it's, I'm a Slytherin after all. We're loyal. Anyways, I had to say that. We're pretty loyal anyways. Not the most loyal. We're not the Hufflepuffs, okay? But we're right under them, okay? In terms of loyalty. I'm the albatross, okay? I'm a lot of things. But I'm just saying, I don't have to sustain all those things. I don't have to try to be this and try to this and gotta prove myself and I gotta do, like, I don't have to do all that. And guess what? I don't eat to try to do any of that, because I'm not doing it. Because I am who I am. If I continue to improve, it's a genuine, organic improvement coming from, internal motivation for the most part. obviously if you want something to work with somebody, then you have to be willing to compromise and all these things, and that's fine. I do compromise with people in life, but that's just normal, you know? So you have to think of things differently than like, I'm going to stay at the office all night and eat a bunch of donuts while I'm doing it. And maybe some more stuff too. And maybe continue, and then maybe order something, and then maybe do this, and then maybe do that. And just for example, I used to hate writing, but I was a writer. Make that make sense, right? I hated it though. So every time I'd write, I would be ing because I have to prove myself as a writer. You see? Doesn't make sense, does it? It doesn't make any sense. I loved YouTube way more. I don't have to eat to do YouTube. I love it. Some novel concepts.
That help brands and companies do that. Well, I worked really hard, and because of that, I inadvertently grew a following on social media, just trying to test new technology. And it started off kind of slow. I remember I had like 10,000 followers, maybe in the first couple months. And I was like blown away by that. I was like, I've made it big. But I had no clue what that would lead to. You start with the 10K, and then it's 20K, and then it's 50K, and then it's 100K, and then it's, oh my God, 200,000 people follow me. But that also means that there is a lot of people who feel like they have a say in my life for good and for bad. Being in a bigger body is very polarizing, and sometimes that's just
okay. So this is where we're doing the next thing. Gosh, she's really touching on everything. She's like a tour of it. I feel like this is going to be a great series to teach you guys about it. So the next thing is always make everything about your body. That's the next rule. Okay, that's the next toxic ritualistic mindset. So she's talking about being a social media creator, and she has to make it about her size. Do you think that if she were thin, she would still have an audience that's somewhat controlling at times? I do. So is it related? No. But in the toxic ritualistic mind, everything goes back to that all the time. And that's what she's saying. Well, my body's polarizing, so this is why. No. It would happen even if your body wasn't polarizing. You have to have boundaries with an audience. You have to figure out your relationship to your audience as a creator. That's all. It's a creator thing. Any creator could understand what you're saying. To me, I just see it as boundaries. What are my boundaries? But it's easier for me because I'm not a people pleaser. I'm introverted. I'm brat. I'm all these things. So it's easier for me. I'm more motivated by the cause than approval. Honestly, I do care about approval. I'm not like totally, I don't give a crap about what you think. That's not true, but it's not number one. So it's easier for me in that way. That's probably like the one introvert privilege to doing this. And every other way, it's a huge liability. But in that way, it's easier for me because I don't care that much to be liked all the time. So it's easier. So I can stay on point and stuff. But I do try to make messages more accessible and try to be effective as a communicator. And I'm always trying to improve that. So if, I don't consider that people pleasing, but that would be the closest thing to it, if that makes sense. I want people to understand things that I'm saying. So I try hard with that.
Enough that just existing in a bigger body and not apologizing for it is enough of a reason to hate me. And one day I was a nobody, and all of a sudden I was like enemy number one to some people. And I think that's when I noticed, actually, if I have to be incredibly honest, the time where I realized my life had been changed by this forever is I posted a picture of myself in a swimsuit, just a normal picture, just me on a beach. And Gillette, the company, asked me if they could use it to just repost. And again, at this point, I didn't know anything about making money. I wasn't making any money. And I was like, sure, you can repost this. I don't care. They ended up using it. It ended up getting in the wrong hands and it became international news.
I think I remember
People
that.
saying that a plus size person should not be used in advertising for a product like a razor. And it ended up to someone doing a podcast about whether or not
people felt at the time that it was glorifying obesity, which maybe it depends, but that's not her fault. That's the company's fault. So we have to remember who to criticize in a situation like that.
plus size people should be in advertising. It was a very, very popular podcast. I'm not going to name it specifically, but they had a long discussion about whether I should be seen or whether or not people like me should be seen. And it led to me actually getting attacked on a sidewalk.
It's more about if you should be shown as something aspirational, which is different. It's very different. So, and I can understand the discussion. I can, and I think in different contexts it could work, but in other contexts it doesn't work. And it just depends. That's probably, in my opinion at least, I don't know the podcast she's talking about or whatever, but that's what I would say the discussion was, is should somebody who's super morbidly obese be shown as aspirational, like in an ad? That's a question. So I don't know about that. Personally, I just think it depends on what you're trying to sell and to whom. But I also think it's important to understand that most people are not super morbidly obese. So I don't know that I would do that personally, just from a business perspective. But you just have to understand it's not necessarily about you. It's more so about the whole concept, which I get that could be hurtful or whatever, or it could be kind of like shocking or any of these things, and triggering, of course. But again, you're also choosing to put yourself out there and do all these things. So I can't really feel bad for you because you decided to have all these followers and do all this stuff and be very public. And that's also a part of being public, is that people discuss you. And part of that is discussing your body. So them's the breaks, kids, That's a part of it. So if you didn't want to do it anymore, you could have quit. But that's not exactly... It doesn't exactly go with your narrative, You have the ability to quit.
And it's part of the reason I left New York. So I think that's when it clicked, that I was in a lot of ways powerful, because if I could make somebody this angry, then that's pretty powerful. But also I had to think about my life in a very
That's
different
really toxic. Ooh, gosh. Ooh, that made me feel totally non-toxic. Okay, girl. Okay. I don't think it's good to purposefully try to make people angry. I will say, though, when I was super morbidly obese, I felt that way a lot. So I don't know if it's a part of, the brain just not working that well. But I don't think that would apply to everybody. But it's probably more so, it's probably a little bit disordered as well. Because I think when you're in it, you're so, your brain is so fried from being in it. It makes you really bitter and really mean because it's such an awful thing to do to yourself. So it makes everything just, you feel so raw all the time and everybody's coming after you and all this stuff, when it's it's really you are your worst enemy, You have to deal with yourself all the time and you're hurting yourself. So you just feel attacked all the time, so then you want to attack other people. So that's probably what it was. And took me a while, even post remission, to get over that. But also I lost weight and stuff, and it just changed, and I didn't feel that way anymore. And I was like, what am I doing? You know, it's like I'm wasting my energy doing this. Like, I want to be productive. I want to start working towards something. And again, I had figured out this was the cause I wanted to take on. So it was like, I have to focus and actually communicate, because this isn't about how I feel. This is about the cause, you know? So it's about something a little higher than that. Now, how I feel can be a part of it, and it definitely is. I do talk about my experiences on the channel, but it's not the ultimate reason or purpose of this channel. It isn't. So it's like, having that higher goal, I had to shift things a lot. So that's what I did. But I think she never has done that. I think it's still mostly probably about how she feels, which again can be tough, right? I understand the personal channel vibes, but it's a different thing entirely, and people will sometimes criticize you for things, you know. I don't know. It's tough. She's in a weird position, I think.
Way, I had to protect myself, and
because she's trying to have it be both. She's trying to have a personal channel with like personal, like, I'm gonna fight with you and da-da-da, and then she's trying to be an activist at the same time, and it's a really hard line to do, and it usually leads to a lot of people hating you. Like, that's typically what happens. So I wouldn't suggest it, and this is just like a content creator perspective. I probably would not apply to a lot of you guys, but maybe it's interesting to some of you guys to hear like these kinds of thoughts, I guess. But I think it's not productive ultimately, because it just makes a lot of people hate you, and I think it's better to just have activism on one channel, personal on another, because then people have different expectations, and it's just different, you know. So yeah, so I will never forget this one stream she did where she was like on a cruise, and she literally was like, she went live on Instagram, and she's like, I want to see if anyone's saying anything. She was just like, and like everybody was being super nice and supportive on the stream, and she's like, and like when nobody was hating on her, she just turned it off. And it was like, you know, that's not okay, Anna. I'm just saying.
I had to learn to navigate in this world.
Like,
where
if you have something going on, like if I had a bunch of fat activists coming after me on this channel, oh honey, let the games begin, period. I told you I'm a Swiftie. I'll go straight to a reputation era so fast with the swiftness you don't even know. I am so ready. I am so prepared. Don't even fuck with me. You don't know what you're messing with, period. And I've already had some of them try to go after me, but I fought back so hard, so fast, they didn't know what hit them. And they're like, and so they stopped. Because a lot of them are just bullies. So if you fight back, they're like, and they stop. But it's like, oh, honey, don't get me wrong. Like, I can fight, but there has to be a purpose to the fight, Anna. Otherwise, you're just, like, spinning your wheels, and it's like, you know? So don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Still Slytherin, okay? Can still go there real quick. Can pull out the snake outfits and everything. Real fast with the swiftness. But it would still be for a higher purpose. It'd be to fight the rhetoric, to fight rhetorically, to fight for the cause. Gotta have a purpose, you know? You really do, if you're gonna do all this. Otherwise, it becomes really toxic, and like you're just wasting your time. And a lot of people fall into that trap. But again, that's not a fat issue. That's a social media creator issue. So it's a whole other problem, whole other ballgame.
People knew who I was and had an opinion about me. I also started to get very involved in the body positivity movement, and this opened up a whole different world where my weight was seen in just a very different way for the first time in my life. So now I have this beautiful place in social media.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. Sorry, I went a little long on this part, but I feel like there's just a lot of stuff to cover. That's kind of what I do when I do these podcasts, but I am going to still continue throughout. So we will get through this, but she's touching on so many different things. So I know that irritates people sometimes, but that's the way I do it. I dissect every little thing. That's introvert girly pop. That's how it goes. But I will continue this. I will say probably tomorrow. I think I might just do this the whole way through for this time. So we'll be back tomorrow. It's going to be a little challenging because I got to go to the gym and stuff, but it should be okay. But I'll be back tomorrow and we will continue this. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a good rest of your day, night, etc. Peace.